Gamers, what's good? I think it's time for a new tier list. It's already been a month since the last one, and hold on. Is that a new fade? I'm feeling pretty fresh, so I think it's the first time I don't have my headset on in a video for like ages, but I'm gonna put it back on because I feel naked without it. So yeah, I think it's time to make a new tier list. Again, it's been like over a month since the last one, and boy, the format has really changed a lot. The power level is through the roof. Might be one of the highest power levels we've seen even in Master Duel, especially when you're looking at the variety of decks that are absolutely insane. Like, I don't mean that there's like one deck that's better than anything else we've seen, just the fact that we have so many decks that are so insane right now. So without further ado, let's start with the tier 1s. I always like to start with the tier 1s first. Reason for that being, well, they're the decks that the whole meta revolves around. So obviously we have at Elder God tier here the Penguins. I think it's pretty much uncontested that this is the absolute best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then in tier 1 we would have at the very tip top, in my opinion, surprisingly, Branded. I think Branded is the best deck in the game, followed closely by where if I can find it, here it is, Dragon Link. So Dragon Link and Branded, I think, are the best decks in Master Duel right now, and really kind of like the whole format revolves around these two decks. This means that we are in a bestial dominated format because both of these decks run a bunch of bestials. I would say Branded is significantly more popular than Dragon Link, but I do think both of these decks are the best decks in the game, and I don't think any other deck really is on the same level as these. I know some people would argue with that, and we'll get to those decks when we get there. In my opinion, both of these decks play just way too well into the meta. I do think Branded probably edges out Dragon Link a little bit. Branded plays better into Nibiru, plays better into Maxi, plays kind of better into Droll, depending on how the opponent plays it out, and obviously plays better into Dimensional Shifter because they can just, you know, they don't care that much about Dimensional Shifter. Basically, they can still set up their basic stuff even into Dimensional Shifter. So a lot of the strongest blowout hand traps in the format don't affect Branded nearly as much. Dragon Link is pretty different. Dragon Link is pretty heavily affected by D-Shifter. You can since I set up something, but it's not very good. Like, usually if they D-Shifter, you're pretty much losing. If they Maxi and you don't have the out, your board is a lot weaker, but it's not that bad. I've won many games where I got Maxied when I was playing Dragon Link. You know, you can still pass on like a Hieratic Seal with a Branded Beast and a Branded Regained. It'll give your opponent like 3-4 draws, which is still a lot, but it's actually like a good amount of control, and I've won many games from that, even playing into that many cards, because bestials are just insane, right? So definitely I would say, compared to most combo decks of this nature, Dragon Link is definitely one of the better ones at playing into Max C. But one thing that Dragon Link has, which Branded does not, is Dragon Link plays better into certain hand traps that stop like individual effects. Even now, with all the gas that Branded has, if you actually Branded Fusion, their board will be significantly weaker. It doesn't mean they don't have plays. That's not the case anymore. They still have a ton of gas. They can still do some crazy stuff, even if you Ash the Branded Fusion. But there's really not a spot where you Ash Dragon Link that you feel that good about it. Like, you really feel like, I'm just doing this here because maybe it'll do something. You really don't know because you can't see your opponent's hand. So I definitely think, like, for stuff like that, you know, Imperm, Ash, those kinds of hand traps are definitely way less effective against Dragon Link than a deck like Branded. So that's why I would say, you know, Branded a bit better because it can deal with the blowouts a bit better, but Dragon Link is also better at dealing with the more like targeted types of interruptions. So I definitely feel like there's arguments to be made for Dragon Link being better. But yeah, anyway, super close, super comparable decks, I think, in terms of just power level in the current ladder format. I think we can move on from here. Pretty much every other deck on the list is going to be based off of how good they play into this current format, which again, because of these two decks, is very bestial dominated. So super graveyard reliant decks are bound to be a bit worse, obviously. First order of business here is talking about the two decks that were tier 1 on my last tier list, Mathmech and Pearly. So I think Pearly and Mathmech are both going to be in tier 2. I'll talk about them individually. So starting off with Mathmech. I mean, Mathmech lost a bit of consistency with the sign up mining going to 1 and the diameter going to 1 as well. That's not really a consistency hit, more so just makes the deck a lot easier to interrupt. But that's not really the reason that I'm putting Mathmech here. I just think Mathmech in a bestial dominated format cannot be tier 1. It just struggles to play into Bestial. It can play into Bestial if you have the right extenders in hand. It's not like every time that someone Bestial your Sigma, you suddenly lose the game or anything like that. But Bestials definitely put a big target on Mathmech's back, and I think it makes the deck a lot scarier to climb with. I definitely still think, you know, this deck is absolutely insane, and it has to be like on the higher end of tier 2. You can never forget how easy it is to go for game with the access code talker line going second, also going first. This is also one of those combo decks that can set up a pretty nice, like, you know, a bit more of a reserved board of just setting up the super factorial into max C, so they don't have to care as much about max C. And depending on your hand, you can even play into Droll pretty well. It's very hand dependent for that, but you actually can do it. So definitely, like, Mathmech is really good still. They have a pretty hard time playing into D-Shifter. That's pretty much, you know, a death sentence for them. But yeah, I still think, again, Mathmech, super insane deck, super consistent. They did not lose much consistency at all, even with the Signet Mining to 1. Obviously, that's not a huge hit at all. Even Circular to 1 wouldn't be a really huge hit to their consistency, if we're being honest here. So yeah, it's really just a question of playing into a bestial format. I think that makes a deck look a lot worse. Not bad by any means, still great, just not as good as it used to be. And Pearly is kind of surprising. You would think Pearly would stick around into the tier 1s. One thing about Pearly, for one, it loses super hard to Droll, which is a pretty big deal. Droll is kind of an insane card. It also loses really hard, actually, to Dimensional Shifter in a way, just because their grind game becomes so much worse, because now they won't have any spells to fetch back with their continuous spell, and also they're not going to be able to attach anything from the plump when you go D-Shifter. So D-Shifter, definitely a death sentence for the Pearlies. And Max C is not the worst thing ever, but you can force Pearly to just waste a bit more resources. They are very resource dependent as a deck. I think they're pretty easy to exploit right now. Maybe once we get that like small Pearly Noir XCs, that's probably going to make this deck go up a little bit on my list. But for now, I feel like this deck, even though it's still super insane, like absolutely crazy, I don't think it's quite on the level of these two decks here. And that's kind of what I'm saying when I'm saying that this list is going to be crazy, because you're looking at two decks here that by all means look like tier 1 decks, but I think the format is just so crazy right now with all the new cards that came out and stuff like that, that I don't feel too comfortable putting these decks much higher. Now let's move on to the next deck here. Let's do Tearlament. I think Tearlament is like comfortably at Rogue now. I know, Tearlament at Rogue, right? So I haven't put Tearlament on a tier list in a while. I was kind of ignoring this deck. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like this deck. I'm kind of salty about this deck like even existing at this point, even though I kind of liked it when it came out. I definitely do have like a recency bias when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh, where like I love something when it's new and shiny, and it takes a while for my real feelings on something to really settle in, because at first I'm just excited because it's new and I'm learning stuff, you know? So yeah, now Tearlament, to me, it's just a really good Rogue deck. Might even be top of Rogue, I'm not sure yet. A really solid Rogue deck. They're basically just a synchro spam deck at this point. They obviously lose hard to Max C, lose hard to Shifter. Play pretty damn well into Nibiru, so we'll give them that. Snow is broken. They still have Snow. Still have Snow at 3. So, you know, I think this deck is just really solid overall. Not like the best thing ever, but really good regardless. And that's why this list looks crazy, because really good right now, like even like kind of insane sometimes, that's Rogue right now. The format is just that high of a power level, in my opinion. Next up here, let's do Sprite. Sprite, I think, is still really good. I would put Sprite probably in tier 3. Oh yeah, because they have the Sprite bestial synchro stuff now. You can play the gadget, what is it called, the Cyber's gadget? Yeah, Cyber's gadget. That's a really good starter for this deck now, and you can just play like a really solid synchro strategy for this deck. I definitely think the bestial synchro variant is the best way to play Sprite now. To be fair, you can also just play regular Sprite, because I don't know what it is, but Sprite players always draw Jet, Blue, friggin' cross out, starter, and red. You know, like they just always have custom hands. So, you know, you can pick Sprite if you're getting breaks a lot in Master Duel, and they'll just give you, it seems like they'll just give you every single card you need every time. Because every time I face Sprite players, I'm like, okay, well, they got so many consistency nerfs, like surely I don't need to waste my resource on this. They won't have it. And little do you know, they had everything. They always have everything. So kind of like a Sword Soul situation for this deck. Speaking of which, Sword Soul, I'm feeling Rogue for Sword Soul. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think Sword Soul is much better than Rogue. Again, you're seeing Tearlament in Rogue here. So, like, Rogue is still super solid right now. Sword Soul didn't get much new tools. The Sword Soul support that was the most recent is really bad. They do get to play Ringo Worm. I don't know if they do. I haven't seen much Sword Soul in ladder. I've seen a little tiny bit, but I haven't really seen if Sword Soul players are playing Ringo Worm. I don't see why they wouldn't. I feel like it is pretty good support, since it's like an extender that you can summon when you have a token on the field. So definitely, I'm imagining that they're playing the Ringo Worm, which is nice support. One way or the other, it's your typical Sword Soul stuff. They just have like really good consistency and they can play a bunch of hand traps. There's really not much that changed, at least from what I've seen with Sword Soul. Like, I've encountered it pretty high into Masters. By the way, I'm currently Master 2. I didn't say that at the start of the video. I am currently Master 2. We're going to get to Master 1 probably on the next stream or something like that. Next up here, let's talk about one of the new decks, Manium. I think Manium is tier 2. I'm feeling like it's better than MathMech. The one reason I think Manium is better than MathMech is because it doesn't worry nearly as much about Bestials. It's a super solid combo deck, very similar to Dragon Link. It's very good at going first, very good at going second. The one thing that stops me from putting this higher up here is it plays so bad into Maxi. Like, Maxi is an absolute death sentence for this deck, so I don't really feel comfortable putting Manium higher up, even though the consistency is great. The combos are insane. The board you set up is basically FTK if you're going first. So, like, I think there's a lot of things going for this deck, but it plays really poorly into Maxi. Definitely plays worse into Maxi than MathMech. You even see people running the Scareclaw trap card, Twin Blade or Twin Saw, so that they can just, like, normal summon Rykard if they get Maxied and, like, search the trap and just call it a day. Like, that's how down bad they are at this point. Which I will say, by the way, if you see a Rykard, don't chain Maxi, wait for Rykard effect. When they activate Rykard effect on summon, wait for that to resolve, because if they don't add the trap, then you chain Maxi and you're trapping the Manium player even harder there. If they were running the trap, for example, now they kind of have to commit to some special summons. So yeah, that's the one thing about Manium. I love this deck, but I just think it loses too hard to Maxi. There is one deck that I think is above Manium in tier 2, and that would be Vanquish Soul. So here we have Dr. Madlove representing Vanquish Soul. Madlove is based, right? Yeah, I think Vanquish Soul, it was this close for me to be tier 1. A lot of people tell me it's tier 1. I'm aware that it's done very well in like Master Duel meta tourneys and stuff like that. So it's not that I like don't want to put it in tier 1. I just think this deck, with the way that it's so prone to bricking, and listen, I've played the deck, like I know, and it's a reputation the deck has. Like everyone that's played this deck has told me as well. Like, yeah, this deck can brick, and it can brick pretty hard. So of course you have cards like Tikaboo and Dimensional Shifter to like offset the fact that you can brick, but I don't think that really makes up for the fact that you can brick somewhat often, and I don't really feel comfortable putting a deck in tier 1 that bricks that often. To be fair, we did have Fluanderies that was tier 1 before, and that is a bricky deck. So if you guys don't like my reasoning for that, fair enough. I just don't feel super comfortable putting this deck on the level of these two. The one thing that makes me want to put it up there, which I will mention, is this deck plays super well into the blowout hand traps. Obviously, it doesn't care about D-Shifter. It literally runs D-Shifter. You don't really care about Maxi. You don't need to summon that much to get your setup going. You don't care about Nibiru because you don't play into Nibiru. There's like so many like super blowout cards that this deck does not care about. But also sometimes you get your Raisin ashed and you just lose. Like your Razen gets ashed and you're like, oh, I don't have enough gas. I can't play anymore. You know? So for that reason, I really don't think I can put this in tier 1, even though I want to, because I think Vanquish Soul is sick. And this deck is super awesome. It's super solid. The setup you get is crazy. Your grind game is insane. Your Link 1 is the best Link 1 I've ever read. Like, this deck has all the tools to be tier 1. I just think the consistency is a little bit too lacking for me to do it, but I totally understand if you guys disagree, so let me know in the comments for that one. Next up, let's do Mikanko. I think Mikanko is like the top of tier 3. I think this is like the best going second deck in the game still. The thing about Mikanko is their game plan hasn't really changed. These new decks don't really change their game plan either. They're still just trying to summon a Lava Golem, get the big equip spell, summon a monster, swing into it, game, GG. You know, like it hasn't changed much for them. They still have a bad matchup into MathMech, obviously, and even into trap decks, they have a pretty shitty matchup depending on the situation. But yeah, I just think they're the best going second deck, and you can also play them going first. I've seen some people play them with the Dogmatica cards, and so it gives them some more plays going first, and that seems pretty solid as well. Definitely just a really solid option overall. If you're playing Mikanko this season, I mean, you're probably already at Master 1, honestly. All right, almost every tier list I get people asking about this deck, so look, I'll put it on the list. Sky Striker, it's playable. I don't really even feel like putting this deck in Rogue. The only thing that's really crazy about this deck is if you draw into Kaiser Coliseum. And it's not like you're running 15 Kaiser Coliseums. You have 3 in your deck. Yes, it's at 3. Yes, it's broken. And yes, you're probably winning the game if you go first and you set up a Kaiser Coliseum with a Shizuku or something. I'm not gonna lie, that shit is annoying, and I have faced it, and I have lost to it in Master. So for that loss, I'm giving you playable in the tier list. You're welcome, Striker players. Next up, let's throw Fluanderies in here. Look, man, these cards are almost dead. I've seen them once in Master. I pretty much crushed them. I'm just going to put them in playable. At this point, very easy to respond to. Like, everyone knows this matchup. This deck doesn't really do anything new. It took a bunch of hits over time, and now it's finally at a point where it just seems kind of copium to play this deck. It's playable again, and I'm sure like I'll have at least one person in my comment section that's like, yo, Flu's actually crazy, and I got Master 1 with it. And you know what? I believe you. I believe you. This deck, when it pops off, it's still super annoying to deal with. But I haven't seen it pop off in a while, so I'll just leave it in playable. All right, boys, we're going to fill out a bit more of the playable tier right now. Don't hate me for this. Please don't hate me for this. Please understand. Understand that the rogue tier right now is crazy, okay? The rogue tier right now is insane. Bro, I can't even put dinos in rogue right now. I'm sorry. Like, it's dinos. I get it. We're going to get their support soon. They can play the new Zodiac stuff, and it helps. But it's still dinos. You still need your 2-card combos. You're still going to brick all the time. Like, you're going to have like 60% of your hands be good. And then you also need to win the coin flip to go full combo. Or you play a hard going second variant. But if you're playing hard going second dinos, there's at least 3 or 4 decks that does that better. So as much as I love dinos, I just don't feel comfortable putting them higher than this for now. Maybe when we get Transcend Drake and we start to find some new ways to play Dino, that could be something. And even then, when we get the Transcend Drake, I don't see it going much higher than Rogue. At least until we get like some crazy stuff for this deck, or the Lars at least, or something like that. I think it's going to stay like around Rogue at best. Let's move on to the next one. Sorry, Dino boys. Look, man, I love the deck. We're going to be covering it soon. Don't worry. Not giving up on dinos. They have a big place in my heart, okay? Next up, let's do another deck I love. And this one's really good, actually. Scareclaw, Kashtira. My favorite going second deck. And it's still super solid. Still super, super strong. I think this is a tier 3 deck. I don't think it's as good as Mikanko, even though it's a really good going second deck. You can't run Lava Golem. You lose to D-Shifter super hard, whereas Mikanko doesn't necessarily, depending on the hand. This deck just straight up, you just lose to D-Shifter. You know, a lot of the time, Vanquish Soul players will set up the there can only be one, and that really like destroys Rocket Link. It really destroys Mathmech, really destroys Pearly. Some decks like these can definitely deal with it a lot better. This is one of those decks for sure. This deck does not really care that much about there can only be one. It's kind of hand dependent, I guess, but for the most part, like, this dude has a different type than the monster you have on the field, so you can always summon this dude. You can search Reichheart. Reichheart has a different type than your Lightheart. And, you know, you can go from there pretty much. So usually you can play into there can only be one pretty damn solidly. Just can't run the Lava Golem, unfortunately, because you really do need your normal summon. I think if you could run Lava Golem, I might even be inclined to put it up here. But because you can't afford to, I don't really see how you could put it up there. Let's move on to the next one here. Kashtira. Kashtira is, like, again, dude, the tier 2 is going to be so big for this list. I think Kashtira is tier 2 right now. I know, like, I had pulled it down quite a bit on my last list, but I've been seeing it a lot more recently. I think it might just be also because Zodiacs came out, and a lot of people are running Zodiacs with Kashtira, and that's been seeing a lot of success. They can set up a Utopia Draco Future early in their turn, or using the Barrage, they can also easily get into Zeus. So the Zodiac engine is really, really good for Kashtira, and, you know, Kashtira XCs lock themselves, so having an engine like this is actually really good for the deck. I did grab the Zodiacs here to, like, give it, like, a separate tier than Kashtira Zoo. Like, you know, like, because Kashtira and Kashtira Zoo are technically different decks. I feel like this is more of an engine than anything else, but we'll just put it there, you know. It's basically the same tier. I see Zodiac as basically Kashtira Zoo. The only other Zodiac deck that you could really be playing that I've seen people do, I've seen people play Barrage and Manium. I think it's incorrect. I think Manium is better without it. And I've also seen it in Tri-Brigade, and I'm sure that's correct, but I'm not putting Tri-Brigade on the list. Sorry, Tri-Brigade players. If you want to ask me where it goes on the list, I don't know, bro. I haven't seen you in Master Rank. I haven't seen you in Duelist Cup. Okay, I saw Gate Guardian in Duelist Cup. I didn't see Tri-Brigade, so I'm just saying, bro, no clue. Speaking of Gate Guardians, though, Gate Guardians are here. Yeah, like, they're playable, you know, like, it's Gate Guardian. I've seen some really weirdo builds for this deck that, like, do just have, like, a bunch of gas for different engines and do some really weird stuff. You can also play this with the branded engine, which makes it a lot better. I definitely don't want to put it in Rogue. You're running 3 awful bricks in your deck to be able to play this. And the boss monsters are cool, but they're not that great, you know. I love this deck though. It's super, super fun. Would love to make a deck profile for this deck. I still haven't. I do plan on making one eventually. I just would like to maybe just do that one on stream, you know, get some nice footage. Shit, maybe I'll try to get to Master 1 with it. What if I get Master 1 with it? If I get Master 1 with it, you can put it up here with the penguins, you know what? But if there is one thing that I am going to put under this, it's Runic Bestial. Runic Bestial. This is not Runic Stun. This is Runic Bestial. You can also include Runic Naturia in here, but I think the Bestial variant of those two decks is slightly better. That being said, it's not good. Dude, it's not good. I know Joshua Schmidt just won a tournament recently with Runic Bestial in TCG. The thing is, the Runic pull in TCG is really good. In Master Duel, it's really bad. They put the Fountain to 1, which basically makes this deck just super, super fragile. It's basically like, if you lose your field spell, you just pray at that point. Like, you literally just pray. It feels so bad, dude. I really like this deck. I think it's really fun. The consistency is good. It's cool that you can dodge Imperm and dodge Ash if you can get, you know, your Quem on the field and also your Cartesia on the field before summoning your Hugin. So there's definitely a lot of things going for this deck that make it really awesome. Unfortunately, with just one Fountain, the fact that you can't loop your draws, it makes the deck pretty inconsistent, pretty unreliable, and insanely fragile. So genuinely, from my results in Duelist Cup, this deck, Gate Guardian, significantly better than Bestial Runic. Like, I got way better results. And you can't tell me it's because I'm bad at this deck, because I'm not. I'm actually not. I was really good in Naturia Runic, at least like for a Master Duel level player. I was really good in Naturia Runic. And I was also quite good with this deck, with the Bestial Runic stuff. Is just half the time you just don't have what you need to do anything. And it's too fragile. So yeah, I'm leaving it here. We only have 3 decks left on the list, so let's get into those. We have heroes here, and you might think, oh, you know, normally heroes are rogues, so you're going to pull them down like everything else. Actually not, dude. I'm actually not. I even think heroes, to be honest, I think heroes are like better than Sword Soul. Okay, that might be a bit of a hot take, but I genuinely think so. If you guys don't know, Astrolabe makes it so Hero Lives is actually a 1-card Baron de Fleur. And that's kind of crazy. And you still have a bunch of gas in heroes. They have insane consistency. And the fact that you can now, like, protect yourself from Nibiru in heroes going first, it's kind of nuts. They were already super good at going second. I definitely think this deck is actually, like, super solid and kind of slept on this format. And I think it might just be that people don't know the line for the Hero Lives into Baron de Fleur. If you don't know that line, I have a video on my channel called Explaining Every New Deck. And it's basically like going over all the new stuff that we got in the latest box. And I do showcase in that video the combo for Hero Lives to go into Baron de Fleur before you can get Nibiru, and then you can do the rest of your combo. So that stuff is really, really nice. It's also nice because if you get Max Seed normally with heroes, you're like, oh, so like I barely can do anything. I barely can set up anything. Usually they'll just go for a DPE. But now you could go for a line to just set up a Baron de Fleur if you wanted to. Although it does give a bit more draws to your opponent than just going for DPE pass. So you might still want to go DPE pass. But I'm just saying, you know, that 1-card Baron de Fleur, not using your normal summon, I think it's worth putting heroes up here, honestly. I think it makes heroes kind of slept on. I genuinely think they're better than people think right now. Let's do this one. We'll finish it with Labyrinth. Because I need to talk about this damn deck. We need to talk about this. I don't like talking about this. And yeah, I know, guys. Tier 2 is way too big. I get it. I get it. Stun, bro. Bro. Morganite? Draw 2 every turn? On a 14-turn game? Go plus 14? Off of 1 card? 5 Floodgates? Fossil Dyna? Inspector Border? I hate this deck so much, bro. I hate it so much, and it's so good. You see it everywhere. High Master, top of Duelist Cup, bronze rank. You see it's literally it's infesting the game. I think they need to ban Inspector Border, or like, I don't know, put all those damn Floodgate monsters to 1. Do something, bro. This deck is too good, man. It's genuinely is just too good now. There's too much stuff that this deck has, and the fact that they get Morganite so that while you're stuck in the grind game against them, they just completely out-resource you by drawing 2 every turn is so annoying. I really hate this deck, and that's why I had to specify earlier. I don't mean Runic Stun, because if there's one thing that putting Fountain to 1 didn't do, it's hurt Stun, bro. Stun does not care about having only 1 Fountain. Hell, you barely care about Runic in the first place. Like, you literally, if you don't get your first 3 draws and you baited your opponent into, like, ashing your Fountain, whatever, dude. I'll just activate Pot of Duality, Card of Demise, all these cards that I can run in a stun deck, but I can't run in like a combo runic deck. So honestly, putting Fountain to 1 was just a hit to the cool runic decks, and it was not a hit to the cringe runic decks that everyone hates. At this point, I'm just gonna call it stun because that's what most of the deck is, and it's disgusting. I can't stand it. I know, chat. You can tell me in the comments. You know, you can go like, oh, well, you love combo and you do these 15-minute combos with Dragon Link. I get it. I understand your frustration, but you can just play Tetris while I do my Dragon Link combo, and then you can actually like bait out my interruptions and kind of like wiggle your way around my interruptions and go for game. I know you can because I do it all the time when I'm playing a deck like Scareclaw Cash and I'm picking second against decks like this. You know what you can't do though? You can't fucking wiggle your way around Skill Drain. There can only be one plus Macrocosmos plus like Necro Valley plus like you can't wiggle your way around anything there. Plus Solemn Judgment, negate my 1 Lightning Storm. Like I hate bro, come on man. You know, I know you have a big ass smirk on your face when you set 4 and you pass playing one of these decks. I know for a fact. And finally, last deck on the list, Labyrinth. I wanted to keep Labyrinth for the last deck here because I think Labyrinth is worse than Stun now. And I used to say that Stun was worse than Labyrinth, but now honestly, when my opponent sets 4 and passes, I'm like crying. And then when I see a Labyrinth card, I have like a sigh of relief. Oh, I can just Ash the big Labyrinth and win the game. Oh, thank goodness. You know, it's not to say that this deck is not good. Again, look at tier 3 here. These decks are all great. So look, Labyrinth is great. It's better at going second than pretty much any trap deck ever, including Stun. It doesn't care that much about Max C because it's a trap deck. One thing though, yeah, it hard loses to Ash. Like it hard loses to Ash. If you Ash the big welcome, you're often just winning the game off of that interaction alone, not to mention if you have other interactions on top of it. So this deck feels very interruptible. It's still super strong, it's still super scary, and if you get stuck in the grind game against this deck, you're pretty much already losing because they will out-resource you in the grind game pretty much every time. They just have a crazy grind game and a crazy like resource loop in this deck, right? So definitely, I'm not saying this deck is not great or anything like that. Tier 3 is fantastic in this current format. Look at the power level of this format. Again, this is kind of what I meant when I was saying this might be one of the highest power level formats we've seen in Master Duel, where there's just so many absolutely bonkers, insane decks in the game, you know? So yeah, Labyrinth, it's great. I just don't think it's as good as these decks over here right now. With that being said, that's the whole list. I appreciate you for watching the video. If you haven't dropped a like, please make sure to drop one. It helps the channel a lot, takes no effort. Don't be a drone. You are here in the present moment. It's almost Christmas. Give your boy a like. Come on, man. Bro, the new fade? For the fade alone, bro. Bro, just for the fade.